the Career Development Center at Fresno State. I'm also the career liaison to the College of Science and Mathematics and the Lyles College of Engineering. So I will be the moderator for today's alumni panel. But feel free to, after this event, to reach out to the Career Center if you have any questions. And we're happy to be a support system for you during your time at Fresno State or as you get ready to graduate and go into your careers and professions. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce the panel of alumni we have lined up for you today. I do see some of you taking advantage of the chat feature today, and everybody's welcome to post questions in the chat. If you have a specific question for our panelists, you can ask it there. We also have the feature of Q&A if you'd like to post a question there, and that way we can ask the question to our panelists. We will be asking questions throughout the webinar, but feel free to pitch a question to someone that's specific and based on your career interest. So let's see, my colleague Damien is in the background. So if you have also questions, you might be able to answer them in the chat. Let's see, Damien, could we spotlight the speakers in the main screen? I'd like to briefly introduce them.
They're all pinned to the main screen, all of them.
Awesome. So in your screen, you should be able to see our amazing panelist lineup. We have Stephen Lowa, who is a recent CLS trainee in our local Valley Children's Hospital, and soon to be starting the summer. We also have Dr. Jonathan Powell, who is an alum of Fresno State and now is currently working in our local USDA Agricultural Research Services Lab in Parlier, California, near the city of Fresno. We have Kevin Cruz, who is a very recent alum working at Actigrow as a research technician. And then, and also on your screen, we have Jessica Wynn, who is the Associate Laboratory Director. Let me make sure I get the official title. Let's apologize, my screen froze a little bit. And she is working in our local California Bureau of Forensic Services Fresno Crime Lab, for those of you interested in forensic science. Also, we have Kelly Williamson. She is an assistant winemaker at E&J Gallo Winery. So with that being said, I'd like to allow everyone to also tell us the degrees you earned at Fresno State and a little bit of your background. So if it's okay to start with Dr. Jonathan Powell.
Hi, everyone. So I graduated from Fresno State in 2012 with my BS in chemistry. Went on to get my PhD in chemistry from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville in 2007. And currently work, as Daniel said, in the USDA ARS division doing agricultural research.
All right. And if we can continue the introductions. Anybody like to go?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen Lowa. I just graduated from Fresno State in 2020, spring of 2020. I graduated with my bachelor's in biology with the pre-CLS option. I also finished with a minor in chemistry, and I was recently accepted into the Valley Children's CLS training program. So I'll be starting that in July.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Kevin Cruz. I'm a recent graduate from Fresno State 2020. Graduated with my bachelor's in biology and my minor in chemistry. And I'm working as a research technician at Actigrow, which is a company that focuses on the production of biostimulants and new generation biostimulants.
Hi, I'm Kelly Williamson. I graduated from Fresno State in 2016 with my BS. I doubled in food science and enology. And then I got my MS also at Fresno State in food science. And I work for E&J Gallo Winery, which is it is the largest winery in the world. And I work in winemaking. I make rosé, ameliorated wines, and then I also make concentrate that's used in the wine industry and also in the food industry as a natural source of color.
My name is Jessica Wynn. I am actually the I guess, oldest alumni here. I graduated in 2006 with my bachelor's in chemistry, and then in 2008 with my master's in forensic science. I now work at the California State Crime Lab here in Fresno. It's actually on Fresno State's campus. I am a criminalist supervisor where I perform casework in controlled substance analysis, firearms and tool mark exam, forensic alcohol, a little bit of everything in crime scene response.
Awesome. I think we got everyone. So here's our first question for the panel. What does a typical day look like in your job? And if it's okay to share with the group, what are some of the favorite things you get to do, and maybe one or two things that are the least favorite part of your job? And if it's okay, we'll start with Jessica. We'll go back around the horn this way.
My typical job, so I use science on the daily, but my job is a lot of documentation. So my day is a lot of documentation, and it starts like probably pretty much everybody's day. I start with my coffee, I check my emails, phone calls, all that good stuff. But when I am actually performing laboratory casework, I'm looking at evidence related to crime scenes and incidents. So I have to document the evidence, I take photos of it, and then I start my exam, my laboratory work, using different instrumentation depending on what I'm doing. Firearms is going to be different than drug analysis. And again, I document everything from start to finish, write a report, and then sometimes based on that report, I have to testify in court to my findings, which leads me into my least favorite part of my job, which is actually the court testimony aspect of it. I enjoy the challenge of court testimony. I think it's fun, but it's difficult, and you kind of start to dread it because you never know what you're getting into. You never know what they're going to ask you. It's kind of like an oral exam every time you go in, and you just don't know. But my favorite part is using, it sounds cheesy, but it's using science to help people. So forensics is the application of science to law, and it's something I always wanted to do. So I like being able to use my love of science to help people.
Jessica, one more question since we're on the topic of forensics. Somebody asked, how can someone get involved with forensics at Fresno State?
That's a great question. I know when I was at Fresno State, and I tried to Google it yesterday in preparation for this, there used to be a forensic science club. I don't know if there is one anymore. There are some chemistry professors there, Dr. Eric Person, who his background is in forensics, and he was actually my mentor. He's still there. I would reach out to him, but I'm happy to give you my contact information too, and help with that. But you do need to have you just get your bachelor's in chemistry or biology, any physical science really. There are some additional requirements, but I don't want to give too much away because we're gonna talk about it in a few more of the questions.
Yes, definitely. But thank you for that insight and referral to Dr. Person. Right. If we can come back around, who went right before Jessica?
Yeah. So I work as a winemaker. So my typical day at the job starts very much like what Jessica said, checking the emails, drinking the coffee. But our winery runs 24/7. So as winemakers, we're only there during the day. So it's getting caught up on what has happened at the winery since we've left. So seeing what work orders were completed, seeing where everything is in tank, making sure we're checking the analysis to make sure we're meeting our specifications once jobs have completed, whether it's filtering or it's just a simple pump and cool, making sure that the wine is still in spec or the concentrate is still in spec. And then I typically meet with our team. I work at a large winery, so we have teams of people. At smaller wineries, you'll find that it's a much smaller team, but I get the opportunity to work with a great team of people. So I work with operations, who is doing the work. I work with planning, who helps plan it, because there's a lot of strategic things that have to be done because there's so much to do. And then I also work with the laboratory, who does all of the analysis. So it's having those conversations, making sure that everything's getting done. And then we have kind of a seasonality in anything ag, really. You have some kind of seasonality. So I could spend the afternoon blending, I could be writing work orders, I could be tasting bottling samples, tasting tanks that are getting ready to ship out because they're gonna go be bottled elsewhere. So it's that kind of thing is my typical day-to-day job. I'd say my favorite part about my job is the opportunity to learn. There's always something new to learn in winemaking. There's always new things happening. For example, now we're seeing a lot of wine in cans. We're seeing different types of wine. There's always new trends and new things to learn because there's always innovation that's going on. And especially at the company I work for, there's a lot of innovation and research being done to do different things with wine and concentrate. The least favorite part, I'm gonna say, is during harvest, I do get calls at 2 a.m. and I do have to wake up and answer them and make decisions. So I think that it would be my least favorite part of my job, but it's a great opportunity to learn.
Maybe we get Kevin to go next.
Yeah, so the typical day for me is, very hands-on lab work. So as a research tech, mainly in the main lab, which is this huge lab that's the size of a lecture hall. So I'm just walking around in and out of rooms. I'm in the chemistry R&D group. So our focus is mainly on, chemical reactions. So I'm running usually the smaller sized chemical reactions, but sometimes I do have to scale up a lab batch. And that looks like, these huge lab reactors. They're just kind of like jacketed beakers, pretty much. Each of them are like 5 liters. So maybe a 10-liter batch, pretty big. Sometimes that takes up the whole day to do. And more on my side of the research area, I do have my own project that I'm working on. It's an independent project. So sometimes it's just troubleshooting the procedure, or just working on the analysis of that project, as well as collaborating with some of the scientists that are on the team, chemists, and a little bit on the agronomy side, but mainly the chemist, the senior scientist. Sometimes I'm on support with their project, and that looks like running some reactions for them or some analysis for them. And there's some data and some writing, comes with research. Yeah, my favorite part of the job is that I have my bachelor's, and sometimes that's not seen as adequate for research, but the job is very it recognizes my experience a lot. So it's not even been a year in, and I'm already in working with my own project, which is independently. It's a very good opportunity to grow as a scientist, and kind of further my skills in chemistry. I'm not a chemist, graduated with biology BS, but do have that experience, and definitely building up on that. And my favorite or my least favorite part of it would be just cleaning up. Nothing too big, just cleaning up all the beakers, the lab itself, huge lab. So it does get to be very tedious.
Thank you for that, Kevin. We can get Dr. Powell to go next.
Yeah, so my days look different every day. I would say there's 3 main parts that can take place. One would be, more exploratory research when I get a project initially. If it's something I haven't worked with before, a new instrument or technique or something like that, I need to figure out how to proceed in the correct manner to accurately obtain the analysis that I want. And then second would be actual lab work. I do different reactions or different analysis on different instruments. you know, collaborate with different people in the USDA. We have a lot of, you know, agronomists, enologists, entomologists, you know, plant pathologists, lots of different people who can teach me tons of different things every day. And third would be like data analysis and write up, you know, writing papers, writing internal reviews. And so, you know, throughout an average week, you know, those things get sprinkled in pretty much everywhere. I would say my favorite part is that doing research like I do, you get to do new things pretty often. So I'm not constantly doing the same thing over and over again. I get to do different types of analysis, work with different, you know, chemicals, different reactions, get to learn new things every day, and get to, you know, discover new or produce new knowledge every day. And my least favorite thing is like quarterly and yearly review type stuff, you know, stuff you have to do, you know, bureaucratically, check the boxes, you know, higher ups need to see X, Y, and Z got done. And, you know, that stuff just takes a lot of time out of having fun in the lab.
Thank you for that. Last but not least, Stephen. And it looks like, oh, there he goes.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about my time at BSK as well, or do you want me to just talk about Valley Children's?
Both, you can talk either or. Yeah, both.
Either or, okay. So I guess what I'm expected to see at Valley Children's is I'm going to be a student, basically. That's my position. It's a paid position, but I'm going to spend, you know, 8 weeks in just about every department: microbiology, chemistry, hematology, and there's even a phlebotomy rotation. So the position that I'm going for is a CLS generalist. So that's literally entails everything that's in the lab. And so I think my biggest takeaway from what I've heard, basically my contacts at Valley Children's, is be ready to be a student. And I mean, that's something we've all done, some of us more recently than others, but we're in science. So I think we're all willing to learn every day at our job. So I think what I'm going to look forward to the most is probably being able to help kids. You know, doctors do a lot of things, nurses do a lot of things, but the clinical lab scientist is incredibly important because they're the ones that provide the hard data. There's no arguing with numbers. And at the end of the day, I'm going to get to be one of the people that provides that data. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. One of the things that I am not so looking forward to, I think might be, well, shouldn't say that. Something that I'm not going to be totally comfortable at the beginning will be the phlebotomy rotation. And that's, you know, that's basically, that depends on, you know, your bedside manner, how things go with the actual patient. I know kids and neonates are a lot more difficult to work with than, you know, adult patients, but it's kind of exciting. It's a little bit scary, but it's going to be a challenge that I think I'm going to enjoy. So I definitely recommend to anybody that's thinking about it, go for it.
Awesome. So the next one, we'll start with you, Stephen. Can you tell us about some of your experiences you participated in while in college that you think help you in your job today or in your career path today?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was that I wasn't afraid to basically go to instructors and like just talk to them. Basically, hey, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting this. You know, what can I do to kind of understand this a little bit better? And the biggest takeaway from being at Fresno State is building a relationship with important people. Through that, like Dr. Van Laar, I'm sure a lot of you have had her as, you know, a micro instructor and some other classes she teaches, but I was able to, you know, I had her class regular, what was it, the first micro class. And I asked her like, hey, I really want to get into the lab. You know, I want to start doing some things, you know, in the lab, kind of get some experience. And a lot of it, I think you have to have a certain GPA, and I didn't have that GPA at the time. But in talking to her and explaining to her that I was interested, she signed a waiver for me to be able to get in. So building relationships and getting that undergrad research experience is helpful. It's something to talk about when you're in interviews, because if you don't, I mean, everybody's done chemistry, everybody's done micro, you know, in school. That's why you got your degree. But it's these extra things, the extra effort that you put in that is incredibly important. And these instructors want to help. They want to help their students. And so I think that's incredibly important to take advantage of that.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Dr. Powell, what about it during your undergraduate years?
Yeah, so what Stephen was saying is definitely true. Undergrad research is incredibly important, whether you want to go to grad school or get a position. You know, you guys may have heard the trope like entry level position, 5 years experience required. It's pretty true. You'll see job postings and they say it's an entry level position, but they want you to know and have done things that no entry level person has done. Um, Other things and experiences that I would say are important. I did tutoring a lot when I was at Fresno State. It was part of the chemistry honors program, which I was in. Um, and one of the things they say is that you really don't understand something until you can teach it to somebody else. And the more you practice that, the more it's true and the easier it becomes for you. And also things that came along with like undergrad research would be like doing conferences and presentations. If you have the chance to do that, it's very, very important. I did several, ACS conference presentations, and really just trying to learn everything that you have the chance to. Don't miss an opportunity.
Kevin.
Yeah. So I agree with both Dr. Powell and Stephen. Undergraduate research is probably the biggest experience that I did at Fresno State. And just like Stephen said, you do want to build those relationships with your professors. And just the biggest best way to do that is just to go talk to them, tell them you're interested in the research, read up on their papers. And even if you don't get to lead a project, you can definitely be on support for a project, and that counts as experience. Any hands-on experience that you can get is the best, kind of way to secure a future lab job for yourself. I actually transferred to Fresno State from Fresno City College, and on that same note, I was very talkative with one of the professors there, who's an organic chemistry professor. And he actually recommended me for a job as a student laboratory aide, which is, they help the technicians out. They work in the stockroom. So a lot of that plays into what I do now. So some of those analytical skills in chemistry actually came from that. So we're just reinforcing more of that general chemistry, using some instruments, troubleshooting those instruments and procedures and stuff like that. So definitely anything that you can get, your professors will kind of guide you in that direction as well if you just talk to them. And some other experiences that I did as well, I was a supplemental instruction leader at Fresno City and Fresno State, and it was organic chemistry for a year and a half. And I think that is also kind of what helped me now, just because it helped me to develop some of those soft skills that talking to people, being able to present, all that's pretty important in my role now.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said before me. I'm going to kind of reiterate some of those things, but internships are really important. And that really helped me gain experience. And it also helped me get to know more companies and industries within the food and wine industry. So internships, I would highly, highly recommend. There's quite a few out there. And I know the Career Center has a lot of resources for that. So I gained a lot of experience on internships. I learned a lot, and I would highly suggest that, because you also make connections with the people in the industry that you'd like to work in through those internships. And then the other one are your clubs. So if there's something you're passionate about, go join the clubs, because there are more passionate people in that club. So as part of the food science club, as part of the viticulture club and the enology society. And that's a great tool for networking, because you're networking with your peers who eventually will be working in the same industry with you. And then it's also great networking because you oftentimes have a lot of those alumni events, and the alumni come back and talk to the clubs and that kind of thing. So I'd highly suggest joining clubs for anything that you're interested in at Fresno State.
Thank you for that. Yes, student clubs are super important. And Jessica, what about you?
All right, so again, yes to all of that. The only thing, because I did the internship, I did the research. The only thing I would add is I actually took extra courses that were not related to my major. So for instance, I took communication courses to help me with those soft skills and my interview skills, knowing that I was going into a path that had a lot of public speaking. I took Crim 113, it's a criminology course, forensic science. Not at the time, 10, 15 years ago, not open to science majors. I got special approval. It's now open to science majors. By the way, I teach a course, shameless plug. So I took extra courses because I knew the interest, my interest was in that. And the great thing is a lot of some of these courses are going to be taught by people, and you don't take them at Fresno State, you can take them at Fresno City or wherever else, who are already in the industry. And you'll get to know those people. Like when I took Crim 13, the laboratory director was the instructor. So I actually got to meet the lab director that I now work at. So just everything else, yes.
Thank you for that. And just hearing that you guys echo the message others are giving shows the importance of it. Our next question is, what resources did you use on or off campus to find your career path or your first job after college? And if it's okay, we'll start with you, Jessica.
So this is I don't know, this is gonna get repetitive, but an internship. I interned, it was part of my program, actually. It was part of my master's program at Fresno State to get an internship. So that brought me into the job I have now. I interned at the lab that I am at now for a year, and then I was hired as a starting level position. And even if I didn't get hired into that lab, that internship would have basically gotten me a job probably anywhere at any crime lab if I had needed to get a position somewhere else. But then in addition to that, someone already said this in the previous question, I worked really closely with my mentor, Dr. Person, during my 4-6 years at Fresno State. And then, and as a result, he helped me network with people that he knew. So I got to meet with other people in the crime lab who taught me extra things about specific disciplines. And then I also just I knew all my professors. They all knew me, I knew them, they knew I wanted to be in forensics. So just that close relationship with everyone is kind of what prepared me to get my job.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, the career fairs on campus are really helpful. So definitely that helped me find my first job after college, and then also it helped me find those internships. So definitely go to those and drop off your resume and talk to the people that are there, get a feeling for what their companies are like. And then again, networking, you're gonna probably hear that a lot, is networking. Go to those networking events. If you're in the wine industry, we have ASEV, which is our big conference that's up in Sacramento. Food industry, you have IFT, and there's a lot of people that want to help Fresno State students find jobs at those kinds of events. So definitely attend those events and meet people that are already in the industry and learn about their companies and what they do and the different aspects of it. So those are the two I'd suggest.
Kevin?
Yeah, similar. My biggest resource was the PI who I was working with, was Dr. Goto. She forwarded the email of some of this lab, the work that I'm at. They were looking for research technician, and she forwarded it to the group, and I applied and I got accepted, hired pretty early on. So your professors and your the person you're doing research with is usually going to have these other connections outside of the lab, some collaborators, and then they are going to usually forward that to their research group. So that's one of the benefits of just being in a lab, even if you're supporting a project. And I guess the other thing that I took a lot of participation into was programs like LSAMP and HCOP. So those two programs are they're research and healthcare related. But one thing they do really well is that they send out these monthly or weekly, biweekly newsletters, and usually they have a ton of internships and opportunities to apply for. Some scholarships or travel grants and stuff like that. So Fresno State's really good place that has all these different types of programs and professional programs that they just kind of want you to take these other types of positions like internship and all that stuff. So there's a ton of programs at Fresno State that I would recommend. But for me, it was LSAMP and HCOP.
All right, next.
Yeah, kind of to reiterate what everybody else has said, it's really important to have connections, but I think one of the things was Daniel at the Career Center. I annoyed him so much with, bouncing ideas off of him this last year that, I kind of wanted to figure out, I knew I wanted to be a CLS when I transferred from Merced College to Fresno State, but, it's always good to get feedback. Even if you've already heard it multiple times, it's good to hear it from different people because one, they might have connections, and two, they might have a different take on what you're thinking about. So Daniel helped me a ton. He helped me write resumes to basically what I think helped me get into Valley Children's, but also into BSK Associates right after I graduated. In a time during a pandemic when it was really hard to get a job, I really accredit a lot of me getting, a job 2 weeks after graduation to the Career Center. It's super important to basically use all your resources, and the Career Center is probably, you guys are already taking a step in the right direction by being part of this, part of this thing that we're having right now. So yeah, I would say basically use the Career Center because Daniel and Damien are probably the guys that are going to be able to help you the most in terms of this basically getting hired phase, which you guys are probably looking to do after you graduate.
Dr. Powell.
Yeah, so everything everybody said is absolutely correct. I'm going to break this question apart because it says career path or first job. So when I first started at Fresno State, I was undeclared. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so, I kind of just started taking GE and, had my first chemistry class and had my lab. And I was like, hey, this is really fun. Maybe I'd like to do something in sciences. And, so I talked to some of the different science professors. I was actually really close with Dr. Pearson. I was interested in forensics before I switched to more chemistry, basic research. Also took that Crim 113 class and had to get special approval to get in. So just I feel like testing the waters, see what you guys like. If you like chemistry labs, you speak to those people. If you like your biology labs, speak to those people. Figure out because there's a much larger job market and things you can do inside that than you may think. Because I'm a chemistry major and a chemist, but there's hundreds and thousands of other chemists who do stuff I don't do, and I do stuff they don't do. So, it's really about finding what you like. And, so finding your first job, absolutely. Networking, it's about who you know, not what you know. You got to get that foot in the door somehow, and knowing somebody is that way. I also worked in the stockroom, like Kevin said. So, Donnie Golden was the person in charge at that time, and so like he introduced me to a lot of people, and helped me with things. And I actually got the job that I have now through my advisor at Fresno State, who I did research with, Professor Garrett. So, I can't stress enough networking, and other resources. Like, yeah, when I first figured out what I wanted to do, maybe chemistry, I went to the career resources and, figured out what kind of different jobs you have available to you if you do that degree. And, off campus stuff, because when I graduated with my PhD, it was, kind of difficult to figure out where to go from there. I used everything I could, contacted all my network, made a LinkedIn profile, made it look nice, checked Indeed, checked ResearchGate, USA Jobs, uh, put as many lines in the water as you can to catch that fish.
And Dr. Powell, there's a question about PhD in the Q&A. So for someone that is already thinking to go after PhD after their bachelor's, would it be beneficial to go to a career first in your opinion, or what other activities do you recommend them engaging in to prepare for that step?
I absolutely recommend, if you're not already doing undergraduate research, find a place to get in and do some of that. There's, everybody does different things in the chemistry department. There's, people like Dr. Goto that do more biological related stuff. There's inorganic people like Dr. Garrett, and I think you have a couple of different professors there now than there were there at my time. Analytical research, so there's, organic, all kinds of different things you could do. So just find one of those people who interest you in some of the research they're doing and ask if you could, work in their lab. And, with that, if you're doing research, absolutely apply for like the travel grants to go to a conference and present, get your name on, some posters or talks, or, if you're lucky, a publication or two. Even if it's not first author, second, third, fourth author, it doesn't matter. It looks really great on those applications for grad school.
Thank you for that. Our next question is, what skills or additional certificates or even graduate education do you think college students need to gain or to be best prepared for your current role? And for those of you that have advanced degrees, how has it impacted your career opportunities? So if it's okay, we'll start with you, Dr. Powell, since you were the last one for the other one.
Yeah, no problem. So I would say how it impacts it is you definitely have different kinds of opportunities. You don't necessarily have more or less, they're just different. The more education you get, the higher degree you have, the more autonomy you're going to have in your position. So as Kevin mentioned before, a research tech maybe doesn't always get to have that much autonomy in leading their own project or something like that. But if you get a master's or a PhD, you're more often in charge of running your own projects and figuring things out with much less guidance. So if you want the challenge and, to figure things out on your own and the autonomy to do things how you think they should be done, I would say definitely, pursue a higher degree. But that being said, it does close off a lot of opportunities, because I don't know how many jobs I see now that they only want a bachelor's or, maybe a master's or even less. Like people say high school, GED, AA, and, so, I'm overqualified for what they want. But yeah, and then in terms of like additional certificates, just try to get everything you can that's applicable to what you want to do. Any free courses that'll get you a little certificate that says you've done this, it's something you can put down. And, believe it or not, those little things can add up.
Thank you. If it's okay, we'll switch the order. Is it okay if Jessica, you go next? And there's also a question of if there's any opportunities within the crime lab on campus for students.
So I'll answer that question first. Usually there is. Because of COVID, we had to stop. We we allowed student volunteers to come into the lab and work in the lab. It was free. We didn't pay you. It was just a volunteer basis. But because of COVID, we did have to shut that down. But now, as things are opening back up, we are starting to consider bringing in students, not like we used to prior, but a little more in an organized manner. So there is a chance very soon, maybe starting over the summer, for students to start coming back in to just volunteer. But you do need to have that science background before we kind of let you in the door. And honestly, you'll be doing grunt work. It's not glamorous, but it'll give you an idea of what we do here. But you're more than welcome to, I hope you guys get our contact information. You can have mine. But if you want to come on a tour of the crime lab, I'm happy to give a tour of the crime lab as well, and all the panelists as well. You can all have tours as well. But to answer the question, I hope that answered your question. If not, I can expand some more. For us, you only need a bachelor's to get into this job. The 4-year degree, chemistry, physical science, doesn't matter, biology. However, the master's is kind of becoming the norm to have a master's degree to get this job. Most of the candidates we interview now have a master's in something, forensic science, chemistry, biology. A lot of people are getting a master's in forensic science, but it's not required. But you have to realize that the master's will give you an edge, a competitive edge. Those students who have the master's typically have more lab experience, but not always. And I'm sorry, Dr. Powell, we don't like the PhD candidates. We don't like the PhDs, unfortunately, because they are overqualified in our experience. We've hired multiple PhDs and they end up leaving because they're bored. So we typically don't seek out PhDs, and they're usually great people, but it's not our kind of pool. So bachelor's or master's is all you need. And as far as certificates, there's not really a certificate you can get prior or anything extra like that. You can get it, you have to already work in the field to be certified at that point.
All right, Kevin, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, so I mean, for research sec, usually bachelor's or associates for lab tech, if you're not doing research as much. So that's kind of what's the minimal required. But for additional skills that I would recommend any undergraduate to do is to kind of go out of their major. So for me, I was a biology major, right? So I already got all those microbiology skills, all the cellular skills, just by doing the major itself. But through my research with professor at State and my job as a student aide in the stockroom, I acquired those additional skills, and it kind of put me in this position where I can not only do the biology stuff, but I could do the chemistry stuff. So for my job, I can go through the whole process of working with the chemical side of things and then walking that over to the microbiological side of things. So it gives me this bigger flexibility that I can work with both the chemistry and biology side of things. So that's what my project is at work, and I think those skills are kind of advantageous even if you're not doing your own research project. But yeah, it does make you stand out a little bit.
And is it Kelly?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would also like to build on what Kevin said about going outside of even what you're focusing on, whether it be chemistry, biology, food science, enology, because, for example, I work with a ton of chemists and biologists and engineers at the winery because wine is science. It's all about the chemistry. It's all about, it's microbiology is how we ferment things, right? So don't be afraid to go outside and look for different opportunities too. So that was a great point, Kevin. I would say it's very dependent on like what you want to do. There's a lot of different jobs, especially even within the company I work for. There's research jobs that do want the MS or the PhD. There are lab jobs that you need a BS or an MS for. So there's lots of opportunities. In my current role as a winemaker, a BS is all that's required, but I do have a master's degree, and I definitely feel like it's helped me. It does give you that competitive edge that Jessica was talking about. And it also, getting your master's kind of changes the way you approach a problem and how you think about things. So I always have appreciated that experience personally, even because I feel like it's given me a better understanding of how to approach problems and that kind of thing. So there's lots of opportunity, and it kind of depends on which area you want to focus on as to whether you need more graduate education or not. And then there are some additional certificates that you can get, but experience is really important for winemaking. So definitely try to get that experience, and then just see what other opportunities there are, because food and wine has a lot of engineers, chemists, and biologists. So.
Thanks. What about you, Stephen, the clinical side of things?
I think, that was something, Daniel, you and I spoke about when I was kind of getting ready to graduate, was basically what can I do to kind of get my foot in the door to clinical lab science? And one of the only things that you can do is be basically a phlebotomist or basically a clinical lab assistant. And both of those things seem to require a CPT-1, basically a certificate of phlebotomy technician. So if you're looking to do that, I would highly recommend it. That's what I did. I mean, I had no idea what to do with a needle and a person when I first started, but you definitely learn, and you get comfortable with it, and you're going to get stuck a lot of times, and you'll get used to that too. But it's something that and like all of you said, Dr. Powell said it, Kevin said it, Jessica, everybody said it. It's you're trying to open opportunities for yourself. And so if I say, hey, well, I might not be a CLS yet, I can be, a phlebotomist, you start talking to, CLSs once you get that job, things like that. So I would recommend, if you're looking the CLS route, try to find a way to get into the lab, whether you're a phlebotomist or an assistant.
And Stephen, if I can pick on you, you were also part of a student club that did some lab tours or something like that?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So I was part of the pre-CLS club there at Fresno State. I think when I first joined, it was still trying to take off the ground. I think it's kind of built up a lot though. The biggest thing was I went to a talk where the person from Valley Children's Hospital came to talk to all the people in the club, and she gave us her information at the end of it. And she said, if you guys want a tour, just give me a call. And that's exactly what I did the following Monday. And yeah, she set it up, and that was the person that I was interviewing with a year later for the position. So making connections any way you can, do it. Even if you already know the questions you're asking, do it, because it'll help.
Thanks for that. And how interesting that you met them in a lab tour, and now they're going to be your supervisors, or they interviewed you. So the next question for the group is, is this your current position after your bachelor's degree? If not, how did you get started in your career field? And if it's okay to start with you, Stephen.
So when I graduated, I wanted to get any sort of job that got me into the lab field. During that time, I was still doing my phlebotomy classes, so I basically wasn't a certified phlebotomist yet. But I saw that BSK Associates, which is an environmental industrial lab here in Fresno, was hiring. And I applied for the microbiology position, and I actually ended up getting a position as an analytical chemist. Kind of what Kevin said and Dr. Powell said, it's, you kind of learn to do a little bit of everything when you study both biology and chemistry. So I took that. I honestly, I knew that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but it taught me how to handle myself in the lab, how to deal under pressure, how to meet deadlines, and how to be incredibly careful with chemicals that can ruin your entire method for the day if you're not careful. So, that was a good stepping stone, I think. I realized I'm not that great of a chemist when it comes to environmental stuff. But I realized, hey, I can keep up with deadlines. I can, do these different things. So it gave me some confidence in that, for sure. And in that time, I was, thank God I was able to get into the CLS program, because it kind of was all happening at the same time.
If you have maybe Kevin next.
Yeah, so for me, I was lucky enough to get hired almost right out of college. So, as I was about to graduate, I was already in talks with the company, and with my current manager, so I was already set to get hired by them. I was only like about a month lag just because of COVID. But yeah, very lucky enough to have started right out of college. And, you know, I attribute that all of that to most of what we've already said, you know, the experience and all that all those things that make you stand out.
What about Jessica? How did you get started in forensics?
Well, when I graduated with my bachelor's, or as I was approaching graduating with my bachelor's, I tried to get a job directly straight into a crime lab. That was my goal. I didn't know at the time if I really wanted a master's, so I didn't get hired. There was no one hiring, so that kind of actually pushed me to just go ahead and go straight into my master's. Then this was in 2006, and Fresno State had just started the Forensic Science Master's program, which unfortunately is no longer available. But I went straight into that. But while I was doing my master's, I worked at a pharmacy, I worked at the library. I found like any science related job, like even like the most obscure science related job I could, just for that experience of working in the field, in any field. And I was able to use that, and then my internship during my master's to get my position that I ended up in.
Thank you for that. What about Kelly? How did you start in the wine industry?
Yeah, so I actually started while I was at school. I did an internship that helped me to better understand what was all of that. So I definitely, again, would have stressed to try and do those. Luckily in food and wine, there's a lot of paid internships. So, hey, check those out. And I actually started as an intern, and then I got hired on. I did an internship for about 5 months, got hired on at the end of that because I liked the company liked me. And I worked in co-man and international winemaking, where we got to work with wineries from all over the world to bring wines in, and then we'd also ship wines all over the world to get bottled elsewhere. So that's where I started, and then I got the opportunity to move back and to Fresno, and I'm a production winemaker, and I got the opportunity to use both my food science and enology degree to make concentrate for the food industry and wine for the wine industry. So that's kind of my career path.
Thank you for that. Who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. I think I'm the last one. So no, I wouldn't say this is my first position. I would say my first position was my graduate school position. You know, little known fact, I think, is when you do a PhD in chemistry, it's paid for. Your tuition is waived. You actually earn an income being a teaching assistant or a graduate research assistant. So you get both experience, you know, extra experience doing research, which you already have to do for your, you know, degree, or you get good teaching experience, you know, teaching the undergrad chemistry classes wherever you go. And, you know, so that would probably be my first position, but then my first position after my PhD is this position. So, you know, I moved back here from Tennessee and was just talking to some of the professors that I knew who were still at state, and one of them mentioned my supervisor at the USDA now, and was like, "Hey, he's looking for people usually all the time, so you should contact him." And I did, and he, you know, hired me pretty quick, and it was a good deal.
Definitely, the power network, it never stops. And thank you for all of you echoing that. We're towards the end of the panel today, the panel discussion. But there was one question, I believe, for a student. This might be for Jessica. Fresno State does offer a forensic behavioral science major that is not science-based. Do you have any advice for this student if they want to work in a forensic lab?
If you want to work in a forensics lab and you have an FBS, I really hate answering this question. It comes up in the Crim 113 class. You won't be able to with an FBS degree. The FBS degree is not a physical science degree. It is a behavioral science. It's a Crim degree, essentially. That would allow you to work in the police departments, and maybe you could work at their crime scene units and photography and that kind of thing. But to work in an actual crime laboratory, the normal now, and this has changed over the past 20 years, but the normal now is you do have to have a science degree, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Forensic science is often attacked as not being a science, so we're trying to strengthen it with the fact that we're all science majors, physical science majors. So unfortunately, an FBS degree, I'm trying to get the Crim department to make that very clear, will not get you in a crime lab.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think there's sometimes confusion in that area. But at this point, we are 2 minutes out. So I'd just like to thank the panelists and our amazing alumni for sharing some great insight about their career pathways, things they did as college students that have prepared them now for their careers. So if it's okay, some of you mentioned sharing your email. Would that be okay if we send the email to the participants today if they have follow-up questions? And I think, Jessica, they may take your invitation for a crime lab tour. I got to go when we did a STEM fair a few years back, and it's pretty amazing the work you guys do in there. So once again, thank you all for joining us for your lunch hour. And if you can do the emoji or reaction symbol clap sign for our panelists, do so. And thank you all for the great advice and insight we shared today. Everybody have a good one.
Thank you.